It was a sensational night of drama in Europe's top flight competition. And after looking at the table, I like to call it the Premier League. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot. You can block me on Twitter. Yank Gunner. That's right. It was a sensational night of European football in what we might as well call the Premier League, because looking at the table, 5 of the top 8 teams in it are Premier League teams. And then there's a 6th one also in the playoffs. So of all the teams that qualified for the playoffs, most of them are Premier League teams. We might as well just call this the Premier League. You can have, let's say, 20 Premier League teams that qualify. They all play each other, I don't know, home and away. And then whoever has the most points at the end wins. We'll call it the Premier League. That's basically what it is. Okay, a couple of quick updates for you. First of all, we're putting out 2 episodes today. So there'll be this one, which might be a little shorter than usual because I want you to listen to the next one, which is the Rob Holding interview that Kent Malmros, who did our Cup Winners' Cup series, did with Rob Holding. He has one with Steve Morrow coming up that'll be out for patrons. This one is out for everyone. The Rob Holding interview is sensational. I recommend you talk about it. Well, yeah, talk about it. Talk about it to your friends. Listen to it as well, though. He talks about Mikel Arteta, certainly, and his time working with Mikel Arteta, with Arsene Wenger, some of his magic moments, being memed. He talks about life in MLS and what it's like to just be a player in the social media era and things like that. So a really good chat, and that'll be out on the main feed and on the YouTube if you want to watch it and listen to it, or just listen to it. It's really up to you. We have Friday Night Clive tomorrow. It'll be after the draw, so we'll know specifically who we got in the Champions League. So if you want that analysis, that will be with Clive tomorrow over on the Patreon. You can use code Saliba50. They keep making me change it. Saliba50 to get 50% off your first month and see what you think for a couple of quid. We did a scouting video of Julian Alvarez. So it started with a 40-minute podcast with me and Clive talking a little bit about the state of Arsenal, and then we went into watching the clips of Julian Alvarez. And one of the things I like about the way we do the scouting videos, for those of you who have never watched them, we use a professional scouting platform that lets you pull all the clips. So it's not just watching YouTube comps that have been made to make every player look like they're Pele while we ooh and ah. It sometimes produces unexpected reactions to players, as Phil Costa knows all too well from sitting next to me as I gasp at how terrible players who are supposed to be superstars are. But that's beside the point and literally not what we're here to talk about today. So we'd love to have you over there. It would mean a lot. We'd love to have you over here as well, and you are over here, so that's a good thing. And now I can welcome Phil Costa. Hello, Phil Costa.
Morning, mate. All good?
Yeah, not bad. Okay. So I do have one other thing. You may not have heard this, but this is happening. There is an event at COSM in Dallas. That's COSM in Dallas on the 22nd of February for the North London Derby. We will be at COSM about 90 minutes before kickoff doing a live sort of Q&A podcasty thing for a bit, and then a meet and greet. At that time of day, it'll probably be more Bloody Marys than anything else, maybe a little bit of coffee even, but we'd love to have you there. And if you want, you can go to COSM and use code AVP in Dallas and get free general admission entry, or $11 off an order. We will then be sitting in a booth in the Dome watching the game and hanging out after that, and we will be telling you soon, not today, but soon, how you can enter to win 2 tickets to sit with us in the booth, or if you win, you could specifically say you'd like to sit with someone else in a booth, which I would understand, because sitting next to me during a game of football, especially one that matters, is an anxiety-ridden experience. But more of the story is AVP in Dallas is the code. COSM Dallas, 22nd of February. We would love to see you there. We think it's going to be a great event. So now that that's out of the way, Phil, I think the only way to do this is to first talk about the game, a game of 2 halves, I think it's fair to say, and talk about the individual performances, because there are some interesting ones. And then we can talk a little bit about who our possible opponents in the Champions League are before getting into a quick discussion of Leeds. But before we can do any of that, we have to break out Paul's legendary Crapatron 2000 because we have to kind of understand how you're approaching analysis of this game. Much like a preseason game, you can only analyze the football that's put before you, but you have to analyze it in the context of what it actually meant, how the players will have approached it, and the level of the opposition. So do you want to give me your throat-clearing caveats on the way you're thinking about analyzing this game?
Yeah, difficult one. First of all, I don't think we could have asked for a better game or opposition after the United defeat, because this was basically a non-event. It was a chance to rotate the team, give minutes to players who needed minutes, rest others who needed a rest, and maybe give some Highlanders some time on the pitch towards the end. Sitting here the day after, that's 4 big ticks for the checklist, even if the scoreline was a bit silly in the end. Look, you can't draw too many conclusions from games like this because, let's be honest, this is a team well below our usual standard and level. They are out of their domestic season. So this is their off season. Technically, it doesn't start till March again. So they are way off where they need to be physically. I think they were 311th in the UEFA rankings going into this season's Champions League. So I know you and Paul sort of tried not to look at the caveats yesterday, but I think it's very clear that we need to address the quality of the opposition. We need to address who was playing, and overall, while I can take bits and pieces from the game in terms of individual performances, I'm not going to be digging too deeply into issues because, like you said, preseason vibes. I'm more ready to take the good than I am to dig into the bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I might balance you out on that a little bit.
Please do. Let's have a chat.
Yeah, let's have a chat. Because I have to say, right, I agree with you. I think professional footballers are human beings. And I do think it is difficult to stay at your most professional, focused, and intense level against opposition that you don't need to be to beat. And I can tell you, I've been watching Arsenal Football Club since 1998-ish, and I don't know if I've ever seen us play a worse team, genuinely. Now, some of that may be because of how good we are now. We've had periods in our history where we've made some pretty mediocre teams look competent. And by the way, I'm not including like non-league opposition in domestic cups, but I mean in serious competition. I don't know that this is a game you want to end 3-2 from a psychological standpoint, but I also understand, like I said, that it's hard when you're a professional to put in the same level of effort and intensity when you can beat opposition without needing that level of effort and intensity. But I do think it is fair to observe the difference in the halves, because despite the fact that it was just 3-1 at the end of the first half, and I think it should have been quite a bit more, and that may be a concern given some of our goal scoring and finishing issues, it was 3.19 XG for Arsenal on 12 shots and 7 big chances in the first half. And they had one shot. It was the penalty. So barring the penalty, they had 0 shots. Okay. We had 28 touches in the opposition box to their 3. So it was the kind of dominant performance in the first half that I would have expected, even if the scoreline didn't necessarily reflect it. The fact that the second half ended 0.75 XG to 0.32, that it ended 1-0 to Kyrat with a goal conceded at the end that I'm sure will have frustrated Mikel Arteta, like that feels a little concerning to me insofar as some players came on who will have wanted to impress. Now, I realize, look, towards the end, there were 2 17-year-olds on the pitch, and kudos to them, by the way. I think it is important to celebrate that Aoife Ibrahim got on and Brando Bailey-Joseph got on. It's wonderful for them. I think Aoife Ibrahim just signed his first professional contract. So those are wonderful moments, and I'm happy for them. But so that's the broader context of how I'm thinking about this. A first half that had a lot to sort of feel pretty good about, a second half that I think fell flat. So broadly speaking, before we get into the specifics, do you think that's fair or still taking it way too seriously?
No, that's entirely fair. I mean, let's be honest, we should have scored more in the first half, especially. We had chances to put them to the sword because we were so much quicker and stronger than them, which is to be expected. I think we can highlight some finishing issues again, which has been a sort of consistent theme within the group over the past month or so, barring maybe the Villa result. I think defensively there are some things to look at as well, but you know, it was a game of two halves. I think me personally, I was disappointed in the intensity of the second half. I know people will be on that pitch thinking I have a point to prove, but they will also be thinking I don't need to try very hard and get injured, you know, or piss someone off to get a crunching tackle with 10 minutes to go. And I think, without sounding rude, there is an element of the opposition maybe dragging you down to their level on occasion because you feel so comfortable and so relaxed in how you're playing that you lack the normal levels of intensity and competition that would normally be in your game. So, you know, it's just all of these things you need to consider. But in terms of the team, I was happy to see it, the 11 changes. I was really pleased to see Calafiori and Havertz come back in because I thought maybe they wouldn't start and would come on with half an hour to go instead. But this was clearly a predetermined decision for both of them to play a half each. I mean, regardless of how they played on the night, these two players give us something different, right? Something extra on the pitch. And if we're looking for an antidote, a shot in the arm to some of our recent performances, they can hopefully be a big help in changing our fortunes. But yeah, good stuff in the first half. I liked the rotations. I liked the movement. I liked where Havertz was drifting out to the right. I liked Eze being on the ball a little bit more. But second half, it definitely felt to me like, all right, if we can score, we can score. If not, I'm quite happy to just get through this with my 5 or 6 kilometers and then we'll see it there. So yeah, disappointing. And I think Arteta will be frustrated. He even alluded to that in his post-match comments, especially with the goal that we conceded at the end. But I can't be too frustrated because there was a lot of change happening. There were people coming back from injury. It's a bit of a freak goal at the end. We should have scored more, and we would have scored more on another day. So,
yeah,
the scoreline doesn't look great, but I can understand why it happened.
I don't think we need to do much of a tactical deep dive, obviously, because it's just a massively superior Arsenal team pushing back a totally inferior, both technically and physically, Kyrat team. They were quite small, I felt, and so they were just being bossed off the ball a lot. And unlike some European games we've seen, when they got bossed off the ball, the whistle didn't save them all the time. The ref was letting us play.
Yeah, I didn't mind the referee. Yeah, he let a few things go, which was good because usually in Europe, every time a player drops to the ground, it's a foul. So yeah, I quite enjoyed him letting things go yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, they were just overmatched physically, and they knew it, and so they were trying to go to the ground, and they didn't get the relief from the referee. I think this is going to be a game that sets up for some individual analysis rather than tactical analysis. We start off, and I have to say immediately, I'm thinking maybe I'm getting my 10-0 here because it's Gyokeres in, and it's a goal right away, immediately. It just looked so easy. But it was our first look at a little bit of a partnership between Kai Havertz and Victor Gyokeres. And this was a night that's going to really cause some issues for Mikel Arteta in a way because Kai looked great. Kai is back, and Kai made an impact not only for himself, but for the performance of Gyokeres, who, aside from the finishing, and we could talk about finishing versus opportunities and which you value more, he had over 2 XG in the first half alone, Victor Gyokeres. Kai Havertz obviously scored a beautiful goal himself, but he sets up that initial goal, and he was playing in a midfieldy kind of role, although it had 4-4-2-ish vibes at times in terms of the way that they were almost like two up front. So what do you make of Kai back and Kai and Gyokeres together forging a bit of a partnership as bullies up front?
Yeah, I mean, people's mileage will vary on Havertz because he's not clinical, right? I think we all think of those chances that he misses, the weird ones that come off his shoulder, the tap-ins from close range, which is entirely fair, right? But his value to the team is so abundantly clear to me. And we saw an example of why last night, because what made someone like Tomiyasu so valuable when fit was that we could plug and play him along the back line and you'd still get a high level of performance. A Swiss Army knife, and I think Kai has some of those qualities just further up the pitch because he can lead the line. He can play off the striker. He can play alongside a striker. He can move over to the right. He can crash the box. He can run the channels. He can hold the ball up, bring others into play. He's an aerial threat. And I know he's not perfect, but when you consider the limitations of our other centre forward options, having someone like that who can do all the things could really be transformational for this group in the second part of the season. And I've been reluctant to put too much hope or expectation in him being the saviour because that's unrealistic and ultimately unfair. But I would be lying if I said I wouldn't have him straight back in the team if and when he's ready, And again, just to compare him to our other options, Jesus can't run in behind anymore, so it's all to feet. Gyokeres treats the ball like a bomb, so we have to go in behind. But with Kai, we can do both, which makes us a bit more unpredictable. It was really good to see him back in the team, and hopefully his body can recover well over the next few days. But in terms of them as a partnership, I think there is potential there because sometimes, the whole narrative around Gyokeres has been he's occupying defenders, he's taking defenders away from the other players who can run into that space, which is fine. And I think there has been some of that on occasion, maybe more than I've seen, but I think it's a fair comment about Gyokeres. He does occupy defenders, but if there's just someone else to worry about, can that open up space for Gyokeres to run into? And I think, look, the defending was useless yesterday. He just was quicker, stronger, faster than everybody. He can hit the ball hard. But in games like that, when there is a bit of space to run into, can he be another option as opposed to the option? Because when you look at Havertz's game, he's so clever, and it's not something you'd normally associate with someone who's 6'4", probably over 100 kilos, but he adds real fluidity and smoothness to what we do. So maybe instead of us being pigeonholed into what Jesus can do and what Gyokeres can do and what they can't do, he could potentially open up options where we can play with two. Can he play as a support striker? Can he crush the box from midfield? So I'm just really happy to have him back. And I know, again, the opposition was way inferior. But I think even when he came on against Portsmouth, again against inferior opposition, he looks good, man. So I'm really trying not to put all of my hopes and dreams on him saving the season, but it's very difficult not to, because I just think he's way better than what we have, you know?
Yeah, I mean, obviously what comes now is seeing how his body responds to those 45 minutes, right? I mean, obviously that was a trial balloon. Start him, get him the feel of starting a game. I think that it's different when you start versus coming on off the bench. So I think there was a psychological and physical concept behind starting him rather than bringing him on as a sub, even though he was slated for 45 minutes. Obviously looked really good. Obviously very excited. All the caveats in place. We've seen him twice now, and he's looked great. It's against Portsmouth and Kairat Almaty, right? So there are levels to this, as the kids say.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I actually have to disagree with you when you talk about him dividing opinion, or, you know, he's a player that people feel differently about. I think in his absence, he no longer divides opinion.
But that happens to everybody.
Right.
We've been in that situation a million times. I mean, even talking about Gyokeres from last night, I think he finished the first one well enough after a bit of a dodgy first touch. He was a bit unlucky with Martinelli robbing the third, but I thought he left a hat-trick on the pitch last night. He's just so funny to watch. I've been quite clear about how I feel about him. I'm not saying we need to bin him for the rest of the season. He will be useful, he will be important, but there's just no nuance or elegance to his game. He's just a human battering ram. There were so many slapstick moments where the ball's just bobbling around, coming off his chest. Sometimes where he's wrestling with the defender and trying to get a shot on goal, and he looks like the Incredible Hulk trying to, you know, get in front of people. It's really funny. I've found it really difficult to relate to him, although I think he's done a really good job to A, be available, and B, sort of match the expectations of him in terms of a physical sense. But otherwise, when I look at Kai coming back, even there have been moments where Jesus is on the ball, I think he's so short. He's so short of the level. But I think this was a good chance for him to kind of stat pad last night, and those chances in front of goal, the Miles cross, there was another one at the near post, there was another one where he got in behind and dinked the keeper. It might have been a foul. And the defender did well, but I think he'll be quietly frustrated with not being able to add 2 or 3 more to his goal tally, because he's not going to get a better chance than that. So
yeah, the little volley at the near post, I don't think that's as good a chance as the commentators were saying. I mean, he's outside the post, he's trying to volley it. It's been deflected. The pass has been deflected and volleyed up, and that's fine. The contact he makes, I don't have a problem with it. The one that Martinelli ultimately scores, I mean, it is again the case of being maybe slightly on his heels or not as quick as he needs to be to get the solid contact to get the goal himself. Now, had Martinelli not finished it, maybe it does find the inside of the post and sneak in.
I think it does, just about. But it's not like a sure thing. You know?
No. There were obviously other ones that he's going to feel he could do better, where he hits it into the keeper. The chipped one, as you say, I don't know that he does anything wrong there, and it is chalked off for a foul. I think if I'm going to be consistent, I've always said, if my striker is getting lots of good chances, I back them to keep playing and keep going. It's when they're not. My biggest issue with Victor Gyokeres this season has been when it looks like we're playing with 10 men. When he's getting one shot or no shots. What is it, 7 Premier League games this season already where he has no shots? Those are the games where I step back and I go, okay, you know what? That's no good. We can't use that, because also he's not going to drop in and connect and combine that well. But in a game where he has 5 shots and 3 chances created, again, with the caveats in place about quality, I'm going to regard that as a good performance, regardless of the end product, because I don't think long-term he is a poor shooter or a profligate player in front of goal. So I regard it as a good performance. I just think for a player who could use a big performance to really bolster his goal scoring tally and burnish his reputation a bit, getting one from the chances he had will feel like an opportunity miss. So I agree there. I think Kai is our best 9. I think the question is whether Merino is our second best 9 or it's Gyokeres. I am kind of at the point where I just don't think Gabriel Jesus has enough of the things that made him special as a center forward. If you wanted to tell me that we're going to try Gabriel Jesus on a wing for a substitute appearance or start him at left wing, that's fine. I think some of the power in his game has gone a bit, and the way he used to hold the ball up and be impossible to deal with, even for huge center backs, and how he could stick his backside into them and hold it up and beat them. And then that first step to burst away, I don't really see it as much. And while I know he scored, was it Inter where he had a beautiful goal? Where did he have the curled finish?
Villa, he scored at home, the sort of curled finish, and then he scored twice at San Siro. Yeah.
Yeah, twice at San Siro. Yeah. I mean, so I'm not writing him off. That's not the case. But I think in the striker hierarchy, I still think I've seen better Arsenal performances with Gyokeres up front than Jesus. And that's, again, we're kind of splitting hairs there a little bit. But this to me is the quintessential Rorschach test of striker evaluation, because I see an active and busy and dangerous Gyokeres, which is what I want to see. But you can look at the Rorschach test differently and see another performance where he was just wasteful and didn't make the most of what was available to him against opposition he should dominate. So hard to say. I mean, to be fair, though, he did score a beautiful goal at the San Siro himself. So Kai being back is huge. I don't think there's any debate about that. I think getting over your ski tips on Kai depends on your confidence that he can stay fit for the long term. But what I will ask you quickly is, let's say Kai's fit to start against Leeds, just magically. He's fit to start. Do you think, I'm going to kind of ask you what you think, but also what you think Mikel thinks. Mm-hmm. Do you think he just moves right back to being the striker? Or do you think that using him in the midfield with Rice and Zubimendi, I presume it would be, and letting that partnership with Gyokeres develop is the better path forward in light of some other midfield issues we might discuss in a moment?
Ooh, it's an option. It's definitely an option. For what it's worth, I don't think he'll be fit for the weekend. I think there's scope for him to
participate. Or
but he'll play. I don't think he'll start. He'll play. I'm looking at Chelsea as maybe the game that he can come in and start. I would be more tempted to. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot we could do. We'll get onto it later, but I think Odegaard is a talking point at the moment because
we're going to spend some time on that. So let's just shelve it just for a minute.
He comes into the conversation of the second half, right? Because what was the issue between the first half and the second half? Odegaard wasn't playing the first half and he played the second half. So, I think we need to be really careful with Kai. I think there is potential with a strike partnership of some sort, whether it's Gyokeres or Jesus. Maybe even Merino. Maybe we go with both of them up front. I don't know. But I just feel Kai at his best and where he is most serviceable to Arsenal is as the 9, as the front man. And that's where we've basically played our best football under Arteta, apart from 3 months where Gabriel Jesus turned into Superman. So I wouldn't be running or rushing to put him in midfield in the Premier League. I think it's an option if we need to do it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a part of me that likes the idea of sort of a big boy lineup and Kai at 9 and Merino at 8, or, however you want to see that. And
look, Leeds are a big team.
Yeah,
Zubimendi, maybe that could be the answer,
Rice, Merino, Kai, Saka, and, whoever you want to play off the left. I can tell you in a moment what I think of that. But, there's a lot of interesting combinations, but this is sort of the problem, isn't it? We still feel it's nearly February and we're still going, oh, this could be an interesting combination. That could be an interesting combination. We're top of every league that exists and every cup competition that exists. And we're still not sure if our 8s are 9s or 9s are 8s or 9s are good enough, or our midfielders are the right midfielders. It's a bit of an interesting proposition. Before we get into the wide players and the Odegaard chat, just quickly on the penalty, so I'll read you a stat from Harvey Downs, who posted it out on Blue Skies where I saw it. 4 of Arsenal's 8 games have finished 3-2. conceding 11 goals. This is in January, sorry. 4 of Arsenal's 8 games in January finished 3-2, conceding 11 goals, our highest total in a month since December 2023, also 11. Overall, we've kept just 5 clean sheets in our last 20 matches, having kept 13 shutouts from our first 16 games this season. I think there are times in a season where you're just massively underperforming your XG or massively underperforming your XG allowed and goals are flying in, right? The Dorgu shot, the Cunha shot, sometimes you're just a victim of that. And I can break out those numbers for you in a bit, but essentially during our big run of clean sheets, we were slightly better than our XG allowed. And now we are massively worse during this run. But a bit of a bozo gene creeping in, a bit of goals that shouldn't be conceded. And, obviously the Zubamendi one stands out, but I think the Calafiori penalty is really bad by Calafiori. And I was so happy to have him back. It's fine. He's rusty. He's just back, maybe. But it's just that lack of focus and professionalism in a key moment that leads to a totally unnecessary goal. This is a team that can't hurt you. This is a team that will not score goals against Arsenal, presumably until the 90th plus minute. We'll talk about that. And just grabbing the shirt in the box and pulling him back. And you give them away not only to get a goal, but to get it back to 1-1. A scenario that we've seen very recently with an error that got us back to 1-1. And just, I'm sure Mikel Arteta, one thing he would have been looking forward to last night is it'll feel good to get a clean sheet. It'll feel good for the defense to be solid. And that doesn't happen. So the Calafiori goal, and you can jump ahead if you want to, whether it's Miles or Nkapie you regard as going to sleep at the very end of the game. Just switching off in defensive moments, that sort of bozo gene goal that I don't associate with this Arsenal, that's a little concerning. And I'm wondering if you have any concern or you think I'm being a little bit overly emotional.
I think on a wider scale, you can have some concern. In terms of the incident itself last night with Calafiori, I just think that was, I'm back in at centre-half after 6 weeks out. I'm a step off. It's a bad moment for him. He gets caught by the flick on. He's not well positioned to react. I think he tugs on the shirt in a moment of stress and panic. The referee, I thought it was a penalty in real time, to be honest.
It's a Stonewall penalty. Yeah, I don't know if everybody agrees with that, but
yeah, maybe they just needed the double check to do it with the angles and the reverse images, whatever. But I thought it was a penalty on first viewing. And yeah, it's a bad moment. But I thought you saw Calafiori come into his own a little bit in the first half. He was looking really confident in possession. I think when he's at his best, he can be Gabriel levels of physically imperious. He's a big guy, broad shoulders, big legs. He can run you. He can be tight with you as well if you want to go towards the halfway line. I just thought he was slow. That was a very welcome back to Champions League football, even if we are playing the worst team in it this season. He got caught. I don't want to put too much emphasis on that, but I think generally, we've conceded each of our last 5 shots on target.
Yep.
Which is ridiculous. That doesn't usually happen.
Well, one of them's a penalty, so
yeah,
those
and
go
two
in.
worldies against
and one
United,
of them's a back
obviously.
Post header from 1 yard out because our defenders went completely to sleep in the last minute of the game.
Yeah,
so,
I think we have been lacking focus and concentration at key moments. I think we have been, and maybe that is due to a general nervousness that's running through the team. Maybe that's just we're victims to some outstanding shooting, whether that's just good play from the opposition, I don't know. But I think there has been an issue with us conceding goals because that was our thing, right? We'd score one, maybe get another one in the first half or early on in the second half, and games would be done. But now we are really having to go all the way and try hard and run hard and tackle and fight until the last second of every single game now, which is not sustainable in a 65-game season. Yeah. I definitely would look to be changing that soon because it's not sustainable.
And it's there's some big moments this season where I think with a lead we haven't looked as assured as I'd like us to look. Obviously we know we went to pieces against United with a 1-0 lead. I was there for Wolves. I don't know what happened. We took the lead against Wolves and then fell apart, and Mikel was really, really upset about that. Obviously, there are other instances this season. We got pegged back by Kairat Almaty through a penalty that we didn't need to give away. I do think, with 2 17-year-olds on the pitch, if that second goal goes in the 80th minute instead of the 95th minute, I'm not saying Kyrat come back and win, but Do you really want to be 3-2 against them with 10, 15 minutes to play and two 17-year-olds on the pitch? It's not ideal. Again, the game didn't matter, so it doesn't matter. But when you zoom out, it matters. The Sunderland game, obviously, we got pegged back late. And so,
Bournemouth.
Yep, Bournemouth. And to the extent that you say, some of these are great goals that fly in, the Krupi goal's a great goal.
Chelsea in the Carabao.
Yeah, Chelsea, the Villa dagger at the death. Just little moments of us not handling the pressurized situations defensively as well as I would expect. And that, that's something that will flag. I'm not going to say, defensively, our numbers still look good. We still suppress shots. We still suppress XG and all that. But you could suppress shots in XG, but if once a game you literally hand them a goal and they finish with 3 shots and 1 XG, but the 1 XG is on a chance that you can't miss because it's a penalty or it's a tap in, that's not great. So look, I think I'm putting this in the category of let's flag it and keep an eye on it. Because whatever you think of Arsenal, I think everybody listening to this, Phil, could agree. Our identity is tied to an elite defense and an attack that can get us enough goals to win things. Mm-hmm. If we do not maintain that elite defensive record, I do not think the attack can go up the levels that it would need to overcome a less elite defense. It's not that I'm saying our attack is bad. I'm saying I don't think our attack can carry a defense that's not as elite as we thought. And when you conceded, in 15 of your last 20 matches, that's not the record of an elite defense, So
I completely agree with that logic, and you're right to highlight the defensive frailties in certain moments. But for me, the bigger frustration about last night and more generally is with the attack, because the second half was much slower. They dropped deeper. They defended better. But it really feels like we missed an opportunity to get hot in front of goal and maybe just ease a few shoulders, take some pressure away from people. But now some of those narratives about the finishing, about how we attack, will keep lingering going into 2 important games, right? Against Leeds and Chelsea next week. I'm still expecting that Madueke shot to come crashing through my living room.
Okay. Let's talk about it.
It's not good. Yeah.
What do you make of Nani? Because even in the first half, when players were getting hot and we were creating chances, and I think Miles was doing a great job of picking out Martinelli runs, that pass between center back and full back. I thought Miles was fantastic on the night, right up until that last goal conceded, in terms of his incision in a team that needs a little more incision. He was doing stuff that some of our midfielders weren't doing. And Martinelli was getting him behind, but Nani, in a half where we created over 3 XG, he had no chances created. I think at some point you are your end product. And no matter how much I am sometimes find myself so impressed by how we can create dangerous situations, I'm equally aghast at how we can squander them. So how do you look at a player who's now going on a pretty long streak of not creating end product from really dangerous moves?
I thought he looked dangerous yesterday, and there were moments where he was finding Havertz in behind. There were moments where he was finding Gyokeres in behind, combining well with Ben White. There was one moment where he sort of pirouetted in the box a couple of times and got away from a few defenders before his eventual shot was blocked. So the thing with Madueke is you can RIP FB ref, but you can have as many green bars as you want, right? You can get all the final third entries. You can shoot as many times as you want per 90. You can get the successful take-on percentages. But if you're not contributing goals and assists, it's going to be very difficult to justify you staying or keeping your position in the team, right? And he's fortunate at the moment because Bukayo Saka is on a bit of a dry streak, where we're looking at him to maybe step up in terms of his end product as well. So it's not so much of a killing in terms of him being on the bench, and there are opportunities for him to come into the team. But at some point we need it to not even to click, to semi-click. Just a couple of goals here, maybe an assist there. He does so much good work. He gets into the situations where he's not running the ball out of play, which leads to a late United winner. But that he is dangerous, and I see people step off him, and I like that he can be direct and sort of have that gene where you forget about things and he's not really bothered about missing a chance or having a nightmare by the touchline. But at some point, and we've seen it maybe on one or two occasions this season in the Champions League where he scored a goal, he scored against Bayern, scored twice against Bruges. But we need more. This is not someone we bought in from France for £15 million. We spent £50 million on an England international from Chelsea, So I can understand the frustration. That shot at the end was a disaster. There was another chance he had to cut inside and he hit it straight at the goalkeeper. So what I would like to see from him is just a bit of coolness. Can you slow down time a little bit? Can your heartbeat slow a bit to pick out a corner or pick out a man at the back post? Because everything he does is at 100 miles an hour. And I would just like to see him slow down at the key moments just to pick out somebody or a corner. That's my main issue.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, look, I'm not going to put him in like the Sterling bucket, where he
couldn't do anything.
No, yeah. He could, well, that was my point is like, they're on the same number of Premier League goals, right? Like, it's not ideal. But it's the point that I still think he positively influences our play. But I can also understand in a team that's just begging for a little more end product, a player, it's almost the worst case scenario, right? Because if you create a lot of eye-catching moments and then blow them, you're calling attention to yourself, in a way. But yeah, I mean, certainly not the biggest issue also, though, because fundamentally we have that position sorted and it's Bukayo Saka, to your point. So I think left wing is the more interesting conversation. I thought Martinelli looked bright, and it was one of those nights. It's tough because I joked in our Discord that Gyokeres would have a hat trick against Kairat Almaty. Everyone would ignore that it was Kairat Almaty. He wouldn't start against Leeds. We would struggle to get goals against Leeds, and everyone would blame it on not starting Gyokeres, right? And like, it is the case that if I'm going to praise Martinelli, for example, for looking really threatening, it is important to say you should look threatening against this opposition, and that's why the second half is a bit of a concern. To Martinelli's big credit, though, the one thing I like about him as a player a lot is when Martinelli knows he has an opponent that is not at his level, he is exceptional at leveraging that advantage. He will beat men that are way worse than him. And you can see that as damning with faint praise, but I don't. I think there are a lot of players that sometimes play down to the level of their opposition, and Martinelli does not do that. There are certain levels I don't think he goes to, but when the level is beneath him, I think he's quite good at exploiting it. The cutting on his right shot and curler that just missed the top corner, I just wish he'd do that more. Like, there are things I see him do against worse opposition that he doesn't do against the better opposition. And I wish he had the courage to do those things more. But so quickly, before we move on to the second half and some midfield stuff, what do you make of Martinelli looking good a game after he wasn't picked and Nani kind of confusingly came on and Saka was moved left? Because that would have certainly been something that had Martinelli scratching his head. And this was a performance to try to show that he belongs on that side.
Yeah, he was good. I mean, in terms of a game, and particularly a second half where you can complain about where some of the intensity went, I thought he was always on it. He always plays with a sort of scrappiness and a desire to do things. He likes to run his man. Like you said, he smelled blood with that fullback very early on, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna run you. I'm gonna try and run you. And there was another game in the Champions League, I think it might have been against Sevilla, where there was a young right back coming on and he just killed him. I think he got past him 9 times or something like that, Juan Lu. It's, for me, the issue with Martinelli is how consistently can you be a threat? And then, do I trust your finishing in the key moments? Those two questions have been an issue for me this year. And especially because we've known him for so long now, we can see what's good in his game, but we also know the faults in his game. So I think a lot of our analysis when it comes to Martinelli is purely just down to time and familiarity. But I think in Europe, again, this is not serious opposition, but I think generally in Europe, the games are more open. There are spaces to exploit, and he suits this kind of environment way more than Premier League games. Because when he first had that 15 non-penalty goal season, teams were not sitting in a deep block against Arsenal. We were the surprise package of the year, playing incredible football. There were spaces to exploit. As soon as teams got a bit smart and said, okay, we're going to put two wingers on this side, he got lost. So I think in Europe, where they don't have that sort of negativity to come in and sit in with 2 banks of 4 and then 2 players just in front, we are more open to using him, but in the league, I still think he's been really inconsistent. So, look, I can't complain with him playing well. He did play well yesterday. I thought he was the most energetic player we had. But those sort of doubts and questions will always linger in my mind.
Yeah. And I think it is sort of a floor ceiling question. I'm leaning on this more and more as I think about Arsenal, because I think our floor is the highest in the world by some distance. I think on our worst day, we are still good enough to beat most teams and maybe good enough to beat every team. I don't think I mean, over the last 4 years, but this season with the group we have, I think our floor is exceptionally high. And I think Martinelli is a great example of a player like that if you tell me Martinelli's starting a Premier League game, I expect there to be a reasonable level of performance that has a chance to help us win a game. The question is our ceiling. Can we reach that really elite, dominant, otherworldly level that I think many of us believe is in the range of outcomes for Arsenal? And that's where certain players right now are not necessarily getting to the level of what I think our ceiling can be. Martinelli's a player who I think, for example, I'm not sure if he's quite at that elite level to take us there. We all expect Bukayo Saka to be there, which is why I think there's an urgency to see him produce more. Striker is a position, again, where we think maybe our ceiling has been limited and there's a hope that Kai Havertz can take us there. And as we're going to come on to, the midfield construction is another example of, we have a lot of very good players. What's the most elite group that we can put out there to try to unlock that ceiling, especially in attack? So that is where we're going to go next. We'll talk about the midfield. To give us a quick breather to set ourselves for that key conversation, we're going to tell you that if you are sent a video and you click it and it is not available in your area, that is totally, thoroughly, and completely unacceptable. In the year 2026, you should be allowed to watch whatever video you want. In fact, I wish there were fewer videos we could watch, candidly. But if you want to watch it, NordVPN is the way. If you want to stream it, NordVPN is the way. If you want to watch the football, it is always on, by the way, the football. Watch it. Watch all the football. You need NordVPN because when I go to London, when I'm privileged enough to be at the Emirates, to see heart-pounding action like Arsenal Wolves, but I want to also see the other Premier League action at 3 p.m., which the Lord hath said you shall not watch. I shall watch because I have NordVPN. When I want to stream a TV show that's coming out a year from now in my area, but it's already out in another area, I'm going to watch it now. And that is how the internet should be. And Nord is how you get there. You put this app on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, on whatever you want. And you click. And you say, I'm browsing here. And you know what the internet thinks? It thinks you're there. We may not have teleporters. We may not have Star Trek technology yet, but we can feel like we can teleport with NordVPN. Am I in Australia? The internet thinks so. NordVPN also has threat protection. This is serious business, people. Let's not make light of something important. I hear Phil snickering. No, serious business. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision is code. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. You're going to get a 30-day money-back guarantee on a discount on your plan and 4 additional bonus months. A huge discount, 4 additional bonus months, 30-day money-back guarantee. All you have to know how to do is say where you want to be and the internet thinks you're there. Do it. Do it now. It is literally one of the most important decisions you will make today. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now, Phil. Send them that.
Indeed.
Nailed it. Okay. I feel good. I feel ready. I tell you, if I could have Star Trek technology, I would beam myself somewhere that's warmer than the sub-zero temperatures we are experiencing here. That's all I have to say about that. All right, Phil, it's a poor second half. It really is. It is a really poor second half against poor opposition. And I got to be honest, in a season where we're trying to win everything, getting too worked up, and if you find yourself getting too worked up about a second half in a dead game that has no import, that means nothing to our season against crappy opposition, you need to take a breath because it's going to be hard to run the course if you're getting that worked up about it. But it is fair to call it a poor half. And let's just say it, and I'm going to tell you what's going on in my WhatsApp chats. I'm going to tell you what's going on with the friends I talk to, with fellow podcasters, all kinds of people that I'm chatting with, is that there's starting to be, maybe at an unhealthy level, a focus on Martin Odegaard's role in performances. I have seen this before at Arsenal, where a player becomes a lightning rod. And candidly, I've been guilty of it myself. I go back to Granit Xhaka. I remember before Mikel Arteta arrived and Granit Xhaka was playing the 6. Granit Xhaka, it's Granit Xhaka, it's Granit Xhaka. And then when he moved to the 8, what do we talk about? Xhaka we can upgrade at the 8 and Xhaka, and like, it just happens. Sometimes our focus goes to players. Now, the irony is the focus is going to go to the captain more quickly because they wear that armband. So I am cognizant of that. Excuse me. But I think Odegaard is an interesting one because prior to his injury, the big injury he had to his ankle, this is a player who routinely got goals and assists. That was a big part of his game. He was also, in addition to getting goals and assists, one of the best middle third midfielders in the world in terms of ball progression. And when you fuse those two things together, I think Martin Odegaard was literally a one-of-one caliber player, one of the unique talents in world football because he was a box-to-box player who also was a final third killer. That final third piece has waned from his game in recent seasons. And he now finds himself in a team that has quite a bit more talent in the middle third to do some of the middle 30 stuff, that possesses the ball higher up the pitch, that has fullbacks that can push higher up the pitch, that has center backs that can bring the ball up the pitch. And so it is incumbent upon him, I think, to really rediscover some of that final third presence. And that has not been consistently there. And that's what I diagnose as why we're having this sort of anxiety, especially in an Arsenal team that's begging for a little more incision, creativity, final product. And that's not entirely on Odegaard, but it does seem like he's becoming a lightning rod for the discussion around how we create chances and look dangerous. And it doesn't help to come on against crap opposition in a game where you had 3 XG in the first half and you wind up having 0.7 XG in the second half. So I know that's a big windup, but I think it's fair to kind of state why this is getting the attention. So what do you make of the second half performance and the extent to which, rightly or wrongly, a lot of focus is on him for that performance?
Yeah. Martin Odegaard is not the reason why we had a poor second half yesterday, but I thought he was a contributing factor. And it sort of comes into the Eze conversation as well, because I know he was on the other side playing primarily from the left, but I thought this was a good performance from Eze. You know, he played mostly in first gear. He was jogging about in the playground during his lunch break. It was that sort of vibe. But obviously, you have to take the level of opposition into account again, just like any of our other players. But I didn't
was he
really
in first
connect
gear,
with...
or is that just how he looks playing football?
That's mostly how he looks. But last night was extra first gear. I mean, 77 touches, 6 key passes. There were some nice flicks and bits of combination play around the box. There were a few passes that he fizzed through the lines, including in the lead up to the opening goal. Things won't always come off with him, but you can see the intention to play forward or create something in every action. And one of the main criticisms about his performances so far is that he isn't involved enough, or that game's passing by. He was plenty involved last night. There's a 3-minute-ish comp going around of his performance. Go and watch it. Maybe you'll see things differently if you didn't relate to his performance. There was an end product in terms of goals or assists, but I really think it's time to lean into him at some point, because in my opinion, it's not quite working with Odegaard at the moment. And I'd like to see us play a little bit differently, more direct, because even last night when Odegaard came on, he slowed us down. You know, we lose a lot of threat in central areas with Odegaard because he's much more comfortable on that right-hand side. He likes to be on the ball. Few too many touches. You don't need to do something in 8 touches that you can do in 3. Those little spins that he does to sort of gauge where he is on the pitch and wait for people to move around him. You don't need to do that all the time. And those little scooped passes that are not coming off at the moment, they need to be restricted to 1 per game. Otherwise, I'm fining him. Not 4 per game. You know, it's just little things like that we're... And it's sort of similar territory to what we see with Martinelli, right? There's a lot of familiarity that we have with Odegaard. We know what he does. We know when he does things. The goals have dried up, so that's putting a natural focus on him. For me, it's just about the speed with which we play. And I think that's been a general issue, not just an Odegaard issue, but it is an Odegaard issue. Because he is not doing things quickly enough. He's playing in areas that are not dangerous enough. You know, why did we buy these kind of players, Eze, Madueke? Because we needed more central threat. I think with Odegaard, that sort of zone 14 threat has disappeared. And again, yesterday, I know there were a few headers that he sort of came into late in the box. It's just not working. It's just not working at the moment. And it doesn't mean that he's crap and we need to sell him this summer and strip him of the armband. I would just be open to trying something else for a couple of games to see if we can just inject something different into this team or play a different way. Do we need to go more into a 4-2-3-1 and use as a more traditional 10 or support striker that can be close to the centre forward? You know, do we want our creativity coming from wide areas instead of central areas with Odegaard? There's all these different figurations that we could have. Is it that the midfield three isn't balanced enough and that they're stepping on each other's toes? You know, Clive was very early on that after the Villa game. There are a lot of things to think about here, but I'm just looking at the individual, and what I see from the individual is not enough goals and assists. And then if you're not doing those, you need to be influencing play a lot more. And I don't see that either. So maybe he just needs a couple of weeks out the team for us to try something else. But I can't escape the fact that we slowed down a lot and lacked more intensity when he came on the pitch compared to the first half.
Yeah. I think there is currently a phenomenon happening too in the way we talk about football, where the worst people say the most toxic things and poison the well for good, thoughtful people who just want to have a good, thoughtful chat, right? And so things get pushed way out to the polls and get quite binary, and maybe this is happening beyond football, to be fair. But like, Martin Odegaard is not crap. He is the opposite of crap. He is an excellent footballer. The extent to which Martin Odegaard's game right now is at the level in the final third that it formerly was is a fair and open discussion for a team that needs more final third presence. That, you know, if I think about Paul and his toothpaste stuff, the toothpaste all the way out of the tube at this point, we get the ball up the pitch. That's not an issue. You might say we don't get it up the pitch quickly enough, but we do get the ball up the pitch, and that is not necessarily an issue. And I mean, you could, if you wanted to convince me that Martin Odegaard was going to play deeper instead of Zubamendi, it was going to be Rice, Odegaard, and Eze, but Odegaard was going to be more in the double pivot with Rice, and Eze was going to play more between the lines. You could talk me into that. It's not that I don't think Martin Odegaard has a role to play, and it's not that I don't think Martin Odegaard is good, but he's scuffling for some of the parts of his game that used to come very naturally. And I think, first of all, let's just remind ourselves what we're talking about, because, you know, I think sometimes you can lose sight of the context. And so if we just look at Martin Odegaard's Arsenal career in the Premier League, in the 22-23 season, he had 15 goals and 7 assists, 22 goal contributions. In the 23-24 season, he had 8 goals and 10 assists, 18 goal contributions. In the 24-25 season, he had 3 goals and 8 assists, 11 goal contributions, and 26 starts. Again, like, better than I think people portrayed it. Now, to be fair, one of the goals was a penalty, so 2 non-penalty goals. And this season, he has 1 goal and 3 assists. And if you just look at it in terms of like per 90, his goals per 90 have gone from 0.43 to 0.23 to 0.12 to 0.09. Okay? And that's just, it's not it's not meant to be hysterically critical. It's just where we're at in a team that it currently needs that. You know, Phil, the final third entries and the ball progression, that stuff is in more abundant supply at present. Anything stand out specific to this performance, like a specific moment that stands out to you, a specific instance that you want to highlight?
No, I mean, I can't remember where it was. I mean, there was just one moment where he did the usual thing. He drifted out to the right. And then I think he took about 12 touches just turning in a circle before trying one of those scoop passes that eventually went out for a goal kick.
Scoop pass drives people crazy. I mean, look, it's an attempt to be creative, and I don't know why it drives people so crazy, but I think it's become sort of a stereotype of the lack of incision, like sort of a when does that work kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, and for me, it's just a general slowing down of the tempo. He feels a bit Goldilocks at the moment. He needs the situation to be just right, you know? The defender needs to be standing over here. We need Saka making this run. We need somebody else making that run. Whereas before, I think a lot of it felt off the cuff and improvised, which allowed his technical ability and quality to shine through. Like the pass against Bournemouth to set Saka away, that did not feel slow. That was like, bang, the movement's in behind. I'm going to play it into that space and we score a goal. You know, but most of the time now he gets his foot on the ball, he drifts left, he cuts out to the other side, he bounces a pass off somebody, he gets it back, he floats across to the back post that the goalkeeper just comes and collects really easily, and then the attack breaks down. You know, it just feels like we might, and again, this is not an issue exclusive to Odegaard because I think it's running through the team at the moment, but we just need a bit more punch and a bit more oomph when we do things in the final third instead of, you know, I'm not going to say the horseshoe of death because I don't think we're there at this moment, but we're a bit safe. And that's why I'm just looking elsewhere in the team to maybe give us something different. I don't know. Other people will have different opinions on it, but it's tough. It's tough.
I think it's tough too because like there's this perception that it's Odegaard or Eze who are such different players that it feels difficult to even try to compare them in terms of what their involvement would be. I mean, you just completely change the balance of the midfield. You do sacrifice things by having Eze in the team.
Yeah.
For sure you sacrifice things.
Of course you do. Yeah.
The question I think people have is, are those things worth sacrificing to address other areas where we consider ourselves having some flaws? I've been very clear. I would like to see Eze go out and play left a little bit. You can play whatever midfield you want. You want to play Zubamendi, Rice, Marino. You want to play Zubamendi, Rice, Kai. You want to play Zubamendi, Rice, Odegaard. He can drift in, he can combine, he can affect the play where he likes to in the half space, top of the box, around the box where I think he is particularly lethal. Okay, maybe you lose a little bit of the tracking back, whatever you want to call it, but that's where I'd be happy to make the sacrifice. And the reason I feel strongly about that as well is I think Mikel Arteta has sometimes been wedded to a hierarchy of players and positions and maybe not looked around the bend a little bit at what's coming. And I think you have to see the things that are coming. And I think Leo Trossard has been one of our best players this season, but I think he's waning a bit. And it might be time to think about whether that position is an open competition rather than just, I write Leo Trossard's name in pen on the team sheet for games that matter. Not because Leo isn't still good, but I think he's waned enough that that's an open audition now. Mm-hmm. And you know what happened with Eddie Nketiah, who got a long run at striker before we shifted to Kai and probably should have won the league that season. Rob Holding was in the hierarchy when we lost Tomiyasu and Saliba, and he played center back instead of Kivior, and probably were a little slow to make that change. So I think there are opportunities for Mikel to see certain positions as an open audition. And look, I think when you know a player's scuffling with their game is when they start doing things that they naturally have always been great at less well. Odegaard's passing is just not as good as it was, just his regular old passing. I mean, against Manchester United, Martin Odegaard passed at, 67%, right? Just like not what you expect from him. Last night against Kairat Almaty, in a game where we passed it basically 90% for the whole game, 79% passing. And if you want to say, well, he's trying things, he created one chance. One chance. He had 3 shots. Now 2 of them are headers, but to his credit, he's arriving on the end of the move. So I think that is a good sign. But 40% of his duels against a pretty weak Kyrat team, 1 of 3 dribbles, 1 chance created, and 79% passing. It just does feel like he's scuffling a bit, Phil. So I don't think the debate is, again, is this player not good? Because I just think that's hyperbole, and I think that's the kind of debate we don't want to be drawn into, and that poisons the well for this discussion. I think the way I'm looking at it, the midfield 3 is absolutely an open competition. By the way, I'd have Zubamendi in every one of those midfield 3s. There are some people that might say on current form, that's not a given either. Maybe it's time to try Rice as a 6. Maybe it's time to give a Rice-Odegaard double pivot a chance. But so I think to just wrap on this, is your expectation that Mikel feels way more convinced than we do that Odegaard is the guy and will start all the big games and he will let him try to play into form? Or do you think that we might start to see other midfield combinations in an effort to figure out which one looks the most potent?
I think Mikel Arteta has a huge amount of respect and appreciation for Martin Odegaard, but I would be quite surprised if he doesn't try to change things. And I think that change is coming this weekend. I think he'll play Rice, Subamendi and Merino against Leeds. And in my mind, Eze could comfortably come in and play on the left. Those are changes I would like to see. Just to give the team something different. It doesn't mean that everyone needs to be out of the team for the next month. It doesn't mean that they're out of the manager's reckoning forever. You can just change things for one occasion and see if that does anything different. If it doesn't, then we've got another issue. Then we have to rejig things again. But I just feel at this moment in time, Odegaard is playing a lot and he's not having the impact on the team that we need. Leeds are a very physical team, with Anton Stach in midfield. They've got Ethan Ampadu in there, Tanaka. We need the bodies in there. And I think when you've already been thrown to the floor 3 times by Elliot Anderson away at Nottingham Forest, I don't really rate your prospects much higher against those 3. So that's my midfield 3 for the weekend. And I think I would be quite happy to see it, to be honest, because I just think we need something different. And also Merino scoring. He looks dangerous, so change is not bad. I think people have a lot of issue with this. Change does not necessarily mean a bad thing. And also criticism is not like this person's shit.
It's not dismissal. No, it's not dismissal. Yeah. You know what? If you play for the biggest clubs in the world and you are a prominent player on a big wage at a big club in the world, you should be open to critiques of performances. You should welcome it, right? I mean, in our job, I do a podcast. Who cares? There are comments. Some of the comments are critical. And I don't mean critical like this. This is the funny thing, right? Differentiating. The comments where people are like, you're a see you next Tuesday. Okay, well, yeah, that's true. But I'm not talking about those comments where people say, I think you got this wrong and here's why. You have to take that on board, right? If you are going to put your opinion out there, if you're going to present what you think, people are entitled to come back at you and show you where you got it wrong. It's no different in football. It's no different in any job where you have a performance review. So here's our captain. Here's one of our highest paid players. Here's a big prominent player in the world game who at one point I think was as good as any midfielder in the league, who at this point, his performances are, I think, short of what we need in the certain areas of the pitch where we are particularly in need of a shot in the arm. So yeah, I think it's a good chat. And some of it's about partnerships and some of it's about individuals. I do think that sometimes the discussion of, it's partnerships. It's actually he's redundant with this player. It's partnerships. I think can be an excuse for not just looking at the level of performance. So I'm going to put my cards on the table. I don't think it's a partnership issue. I've danced around that. I've talked about it. It might be redundancy because now Zubi can progress the ball or Rice can. I just think post-injury, I've seen a player who's not playing at the tempo and with the incision and with the end product that we know had been in his game previously. I'm not writing it off. I just don't think it's there. I think he's very comfortable drifting outside the block instead of staying inside the block. But to be clear, I've seen him have very important performances. I've seen him score a beautiful goal against Brighton. I think this player will be a critical part of our run to winning things this season. But what that role is, I think is going to have to evolve a little bit. So let's see. Now, to your point, if the midfield fill is Zubi, Rice, and Merino, then you've got Eze out of the team again. And I think you still potentially run the risk of that between the lines creativity issue propping back up. Because if you want goals, you have to have the players that can create those goals. You're putting a lot of pressure on Merino and Rice to do that. And yeah, I don't know if that's their primary skill. Let's finish the Champions League discussion. Well, real quick, I don't think there's anything to say on Ibrahim or Brando Belly-Joseph to you. I mean, there wasn't much opportunity for them to shine other than to just congratulate them.
Yeah, really good night for both of them. And I think it's important that we do this. And also just to mention Kyrat as well, I think it's worth saying, fair play to them, because those players and the travelling fans looked like kids on Christmas when that Champions League music started.
Yeah.
And that could be once in a lifetime stuff for them. And even though we're being consumed by stress and nerves and, doubts about every minute of every game that we're playing in the league, football is a really special sport sometimes. And scoring twice at Emirates Stadium would have been beyond anything they could have dreamed of. So fair play to them. A really nice night for them. And to score twice at this stadium against this opposition, that's a really good night.
It's against our rooting interest, but to your point about football being special, a goalkeeper scoring a late extra goal against Real Madrid to get you into the playoffs of the Champions League instead of being eliminated now, unfortunately, at the expense of Marseille. And that means Ethan's Champions League adventure is over. But, I mean, it was so interesting. If you didn't watch that game, by the way, Madrid went down to 9 men. Benfica were winning. I don't think they knew they needed another goal to be through. It didn't look like they knew. At one point, the ball was played back to their keeper, and he did the thing where he plays it off his chest and keeps it at his feet and waits and waits and waits. And the crowd screaming at him, because presumably they've checked their phones and seen what the scenario was. They figured it out when there was a late foul at 90 plus 5 of 5 minutes added. The keeper goes up on the free kick. The keeper scores from the free kick, and that goal sends them through and knocks Marseille out. So just an extraordinary moment. I do have to say, even though we're critical of UEFA and we're critical of the tinkering with the game, the league table phase of the Champions League has produced an amount of drama that the group stage hasn't always mustered. This was a really interesting final day of positions shifting around. I guess I should ask you, since we didn't really analyze it, any thoughts on their last goal to make it 3-2?
I think it's just where in the last 30 seconds, very sloppy stuff. We didn't win a couple of the bounces and the duels in midfield. Nkapie gets sucked under the ball a little bit, which I don't think is unusual. It's happened a couple of times already this year. And I think you're maybe seeing his lack of natural ability as a centre-back shine through in those moments. But again, I'm not too bothered about it. I think people just need to switch on a little bit more, and maybe in that moment, in that point of the game, they were just not switched on. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Doesn't look great for him, though.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he's supposed to be going to the near post there and Miles should be tracking the runner that's coming back to the back post. I wasn't really sure people were split on that. It's just a bad goal. It'll annoy Mikel. And like I said, for a team that just needed to feel its dominance a little bit, I think losing the second half 1-0 to Kairat Almaty is not exactly what you wanted. But look, it was a fun game for a half, and then it wasn't. And at halftime, I was thinking, this is fun. I'm enjoying it. Okay, the goal we gave away is done, but this is really fun. The second half annoyed me. If you were listening to this and you're thinking of taking it too seriously, I probably am. It just annoyed me. I felt annoyed by it. I was having fun, and then I wasn't. And it's like in a season where it's not going to be fun because it's going to be so tense. This was one of those games that I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. In the first half, I was like, it is fun. 3xG, all these shots, 3 goals. This is great. Let's have another 3 or 4 in the second half. And to score no goals, create very few chances, and lose it 1-0. It was just annoying. It doesn't matter, but it was annoying. In terms of our opposition and who we can face in the, not in the playoffs, because we're not in them, thankfully, but in the round of 16, it's very straightforward. Dortmund, Leverkusen, Atalanta, Olympiakos. Quickly, Dortmund, Leverkusen, Atalanta, Olympiakos. Your thoughts on if you have a preference among them?
I mean, obviously the draw isn't happening until Friday. We're talking on Thursday, but it's not a bad selection. I have to be honest. Obviously, in terms of names, you look at Borussia Dortmund. On paper, that will be the toughest one of all 4 sides because they've got the European pedigree. They've got the most intimidating away ground, and Niko Kovac has done a decent job since coming in. They're still 8 points behind Bayern in the league, but they have a big bozo gene, Borussia Dortmund, and that seems to have settled slightly under him, although they have struggled in big games in Europe this season. They've lost to City, Spurs and Inter. So you'd still feel good about any of them. Olympiakos, I mean, I don't know why we're bothering talking about the other teams because it's the law of the universe that Arsenal must play Olympiakos whenever and wherever possible. They actually did well to finish in the top 24 because they didn't win any of their first 5. So they had to rescue it with winning each of their last 3 against Kyrat, Bayer Leverkusen and Ajax. Again, difficult away day, Piraeus, sort of hostile stadium, but I think we should be fine. Atalanta, it's hard to know what to make of them because for the first time in 9 years, Gianpiero Gasperini is not their manager, and he kind of worked wonders there, took them from relegation candidates to Europa League winners. They got very far in the Champions League as well, playing some amazing football along the way. I mean, they've still got good players like Scamacca, Scalvini, Ademola Lookman's there, Charles de Ketelaere is there, but they're not as exciting as they have been in recent years, and they've been a bit stinky in the league. So I'll be fine with them. Bayer Leverkusen, again, a good team. Nobody we should be super worried about not beating. They've got Kasper Hjulmand as their manager. After they sort of had, they read through Ten Hag. Everyone clocked onto him being a fraud after 5 minutes and decided they didn't want to play under him anymore. Funny. Some interesting young players again, Christian Kofani, Ernest Poku, but on top of all the usual guys we know, like Patrick Schick, Grimaldo. But again, I look at all of those four and think, perfect. Home and away, we should be absolutely fine against all of those four teams. Where it gets interesting is after that, because I'm making peace with playing an English team or two already, and I hate doing that in Europe. I don't know why. It just feels worse. But yeah, regardless of who we get in the quarterfinal, semis, and final, if we get there, I think we should be fine to at least get through one more round without eternal disappointment, basically. So yeah.
Inter, Madrid, or City is what it looks like in the round of 16. And it's not that I don't think we can beat any of these teams. Let's be clear. You want to win the Champions League. You can't just script for yourself the perfect, easy path through. But Inter, Madrid, or City in the quarterfinal, like, let's just be clear. I don't want to play City. I'm with you. Like, I don't want to play Premier League teams if I don't have to. And if I have to, well, this is where it's tough. If you told me I have to play a Premier League team at some point, I'd rather do it earlier than later. You know what I mean? I'd rather not do it in a final. But some of my worst memories in the Champions League are playing Premier League teams. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I don't want City. I think Madrid are beatable, obviously.
Especially now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Inter probably are the weakest of the group. You could convince me Madrid are, but I still think just from a pedigree standpoint, from an away ground standpoint, in terms of the elite talent they have in attack, they could be bad, and Kylian Mbappe could score a hat trick and knock you out. Vinicius Jr. So I think I'd rate that Inter, Madrid, City in that order. I don't have much of a concern about the round before that. If we can't beat Dortmund, Bayer Leverkusen, Olympiakos, or Atalanta, then we're not going to win the Champions League. And that's just how that works. So fine by me. The annoying thing is, had Madrid beat Benfica, Manchester City would be in a playoff. Mm-hmm. But now they're not. Now, if we need Manchester City to be in a playoff to win the Premier League, shame on us also, but you'll take every little bit you can get. So that's how that sets up. Last quick thought, it's Leeds the weekend. We beat them very comfortably at the Emirates, but they're in a decent run of form at home. I think it's 10 games they haven't lost at home, so it's not the layup you'd expect. But again, this thing we do where we say, oh, but this is a hard game, but that's a hard game. Well, football's a hard game, but if you want to be the Premier League champion, like, you have to win at Leeds. I'm sorry, you have to go to Ellen Road and win. That's just kind of the mission. Obviously, we need to do that, and Mikel Arteta will be looking at a list of very talented players, and I'm not sure he'll be certain of which ones to pick. So very quickly, your concise thoughts on the Leeds game?
It's going to be a difficult one. You're absolutely right. Their fortunes have changed. They've only lost 1 of their last 10. They've won 3 of their last 5 at home as well, including a 3-1 win against Chelsea. They drew against Liverpool. They drew against United. So this is a team who have found some mojo and some form and some rhythm after a really difficult start to the season. I thought Daniel Farke was kind of a shoe-in to get fired at one point as well. So we need our wits about us, and I think I'm leaning towards a more physical midfield. I said it earlier, I just think we could do with Marino being in there as well for a bit of extra muscle, and then rely on the creativity from the wide areas. For example, a Saka, an Eze, a Trossard. I don't think it's the game for Martinelli to start. But we need to be switched on. I think there's a lot of pressure on us this weekend. Like, I know we're trying not to think about it, but 3 games without a win, the late defeat to United, City sort of have us in their sights again, potentially Villa as well. They'll be waiting for any sign of weakness. And I think the defeat against United was a sign of weakness, even though they beat City as well. So the whole narrative around Arsenal is that they can't get over the line. They're bottling these leagues, 3 second place finishes in a row. And even though we can apply context to it, other people don't want to, and they don't have to. Ultimately, that one bit of narrative is surrounding us at the moment, and we need to be the ones to convince people that is not true. And there are people slowly starting to feel that way, so we need to convince ourselves that it's not true. So I just think I'm going to be a nervous wreck until we play. However, it's a 3 p.m. game, so it won't be on TV. I think that is a very minuscule thing, but it might help. The whole country won't be watching. Maybe we'll feel a bit a bit more relaxed in that situation, but I would just love to see us go there with a bit more attacking intention. Not be so afraid to make some mistakes or lose the ball occasionally. We need to find ways to give this team a kick up the arse. And I think Leeds will want to make this a fight. They'll want to make this a battle. So we need to maximize the opportunities that we get. So no open goal misses at the back post. No obvious ones in front of goal that we take too long for and don't get the shot away. We need to be sharp, we need to be clinical, and we need the ball in the back of the net. So that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm looking for. But more than anything, we need a win. So that's all I'll be hoping for, mainly at the end of the day.
Yeah, we got to stop with this thing we do where we say every game is hard and try to manage expectations. Like, you're trying to win the Premier League, there are going to be expectations. We got to lean into that. I get that softening the expectations makes it less nervy, but it's not realistic. You gotta go win these games if you want to be the best team in the league. Just quickly, if you're wondering if Havertz will play, here's what Mikel had to say on whether he's ready for the Premier League. He's fine. That's what we planned. 45 minutes. We wanted to start him as well so he could do all the processes before that in the best possible way. And from now on, we have to make a decision whether he starts or not in these competitions. On whether he's knocking on the door for Leeds, for sure. He wanted to continue playing today, so I know what is coming tomorrow. I think with these kind of situations, the biggest thing is how his body responds. If there's inflammation, if there's swelling, if there's pain, he won't play. If he feels good, I think Mikel's going to be tempted to get him out there for Leeds as a shot in the arm. So we'll just have to see. Whoever is out there, here's what I do believe. And I don't care if it's Odegaard or not, or if it's Kai, or if it's Gyokeres. The 11 Arsenal players that will be out there are good enough to win that game. And if they play to their level, they should win that game. And I expect that they will win that game on track to what we know is a historic quad-winning season. So we'll leave it there. Friday Night Clive tomorrow. We'll handle Mikel's presser and the draw. So we'll know who we're playing in the Champions League. We can touch on that a little bit. There'll be an instant reaction coming up. As I said, we're going to do monthly Academy Pods with Will Balsam, which I'm really excited about doing. And we've got some other fun stuff. If you want to see us in Dallas, it's the 22nd of February. AVP in Dallas is the code to use with Kazem to get free general admission or $11 off an order. We will give you information on how to win the 2 tickets to join us in the booth under the dome to watch the big Derby game at the end of February. But I hope to see you there, and I'm just glad to be going somewhere warm. Phil, thank you.
Nice one. I love how we said this was going to be a quick one, and we're here 1 hour, 15 minutes in.
Quick hour 15. It's not an hour 40.
Change.
It's not an hour 40, is it?
Yeah.
Hey, you'll also see the Rob Holding interview coming out. Make sure to listen to it. It's fantastic. Enough nonsense from me. I feel that I put in the minutes today. This is like when you rotate the squad and you have to lean on certain players, like Christian Norgard, who we didn't discuss today. Excellent in this game. In fact, had a really clever back heel for a chance that he
I liked what I saw yesterday from Jorginho. I thought he was good. I didn't appreciate your slander in the IR.
Just so we're clear, the IR is its own thing. It lives in its own world. It's apart from reality. I may have made some jokey comments, but I was impressed by Norgard, and I thought he was good. And I liked his performance, and I'm glad that he's here. Okay, now it's an hour 17, Phil. Enough. My name is Elliot Smith. We love you, and we will talk after Arsenal 10 leads. So